CSEC Biology with yours truly, Miss Shallow. In today's lesson, we will be talking about cells. This is the first in our series on cell biology, and in this lesson we will define a cell, distinguish between unicellular and multicellular organisms, and describe the structure of a typical plant and animal cell. So let's go! Imagine that you are building a wall. You will have to lay brick by brick, block by block. So too if you were building a living organism. If you were to build a living organism, you will build that organism cell by cell by cell. As such, the cell can be defined as the building block of life. So all living organisms, from the tiniest organism to the largest organism, are made up of cells. A cell, therefore, is the smallest part of a living organism. Now, some organisms can be just one cell, like an amoeba or bacteria or paramecium, and those type of organisms are called unicellular organisms. Uni meaning only one. Other larger organisms such as plants, animals and fungi are made up of thousands and millions and trillions of cells. These type of organisms are described as being multicellular, simply because they're made up of many cells, multi meaning many. Here's a fun fact. The human body consists of over 37 trillion cells. Now, if our body is made up of over 37 trillion cells, you could only imagine how tiny one cell is going to be. Cells are so small that they can only be seen under a microscope. So cells are described as microscopic. There are only a few cells that are visible with your naked eye. Let us look at a few cells under the microscope. These are cells from the cheek. And these are blood cells. The pink spheres are the red blood cells, and the larger purple ones are our white blood cells. These are cells from an onion. And these are cells taken from a leaf. Even though plants and animals are made up of trillions of cells, all cells are not the same. But some cells can be described as typical. The typical animal cell looks something like this. The cell, of course, has several different parts, and those different parts of the cell are called organelles. The first part that we would look at is the outermost part of the cell. It is what surrounds the cell, and that is called the cell membrane. Enclosed in the cell membrane is the cytosol, or more commonly called the cytoplasm. And the cytoplasm is a jelly-like material that holds everything else. Within the cytoplasm, we have a very large and distinct feature that is called the nucleus. And inside of the nucleus, we have the nucleolus. The cytoplasm also contains rod-like structures that are called mitochondria. There are small organelles within the animal cell that are called ribosomes, and some larger ones that are called lysosomes. This animal cell looks very simple, and this is because it is viewed under a light microscope. But the cell, if viewed under a more powerful microscope, such as an electron microscope, would be much more detailed and would look something like this. The typical plant cell, as viewed under a light microscope, is also very simple. It has its outermost membrane being the cell wall, and just like the animal cell, another membrane on the inside that is called the cell membrane. It too has a nucleus that would contain a nucleolus, and all nuclei, whether in a plant cell or an animal cell, is bound or surrounded by a nuclear membrane. The plant cell also contains that jelly-like material, the cytoplasm, in which all of the other organelles are found. Just like the animal cell, we have our rod-shaped structures called the mitochondria. We have very large structures called the chloroplast. The majority of the space within the plant cell is taken up by a structure that is called a vacuole. Plant cells will also contain ribosomes, even though they are not viewed in this diagram. Again, it seems very simple, but if you were to examine a plant cell under a more powerful electron microscope, it would look more like this. So today, we learned that the cell is the building block of life. It is the smallest part of a living organism. Most cells can only be seen under a microscope, and only very few are visible to the naked eye. Some organisms consist of only one cell and are described as being unicellular, while other organisms contain many cells and are described as being multicellular. Cells have different parts, and those parts of the cell are called the organelles. And the organelles of a cell would include the nucleus, the cell membrane, the cytoplasm, and the mitochondria. Thank you for viewing today, and don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button and be the first to know when our next video is. In the next video, we looked more in depth at each individual cell and each organelle in the cell. See you next time.